All right. Ladies and gentlemen, the panel discussion, you know already that it's about driving growth and efficiency through data and analytics, but I love it how it's been titled, Turning Data into Dollars, and I'm sure that gets your attention right in there. When the seasoned specialists are here, I got to definitely do my job right and invite them straight up onto the stage so that they do the context setting and take you all deeper into turning that data into dollars. So allow me to warmly welcome on the screen Kaushal Shetty, the Global Director, Digital and Technology, Pfizer. Hi Kaushal, warm welcome. With that, let's also invite Dr. Alok Nath Dey, the Corporate Vice President and Chief Technology Officer from Samsung India. Dr. Dey, welcoming you with a good round of cheer. Let's welcome Sachin Bhalla, the Vice President, Secure Power Division, India and SAARC from Schneider Electric India. And we're joined by the one who also has a very lovely smile. Let's welcome Divya Kumar, the Global Digital Chief Financial Officer from IKEA Retail. Hi Divya, we'll be shortly seeing you on the screen. And with that, ladies and gentlemen, we'll also be joined by Sanjeev Arora, the Chief Technology Officer from JCB India, who should be shortly joining us in some time from now. Well, the discussion, this particular discussion would be led together by Biswajit Das, the Director Advisory Analytics AI Data Lake CVM from KPMG. And Biswajit, I know you all have been waiting to take up the stage. It's all yours now.
Tika, thank you so much. It's always great to see all of you. Hopefully we are far from the day where we'll actually be on the same stage together. And thank you everyone who joined, what do we call this, hashtag, the ET Cloud Innovation Summit, right? In the old days, weather would be all the hot topic of conversation, whether it's going to rain, not rain, etc. Same is the case today, right? Whether it's normal life or technology or the life of technology, cloud continues to dominate boardrooms as well as the living room conversations. But it's 2021, and obviously by now we know how cloud has revolutionized the technology infrastructure ecosystem by turning the entire CapEx OpEx equation on its head. But a friend of mine, Abhijit Verma, says, "Thou shalt cloud, come hell or high water," and I absolutely am a believer. But what I think we as organizations are also rapidly realizing is the value that a cloud ecosystem can bring to you beyond infrastructure in terms of capabilities, tools, all stitched together and integrated along with the flexibility of choice and scale on demand, right? And if you look at technology ambitions of large organizations, most of it is powered by the ABC, right? So the algorithm, big data, and cloud. While some opinions seem to think of these in terms of three different silos, actually they are a very, very symbiotic relationship. You need lots of data, preferably varied and coming at you in actual time. And you need the compute muscle to be able to process it when you want, meaning, sporadic demands and peaks, and to be able to run all of this, which comes obviously from a cloud ecosystem. And because data in so many ways is just like money, right? To oversimplify, money has no value other than its ability to buy goods and services and the sense of security you get out of that knowledge when you have money. In the same way, data by itself is just bits and bytes, right? And pretty much useless till such time as we are able to harness it and wrangle some information out of it. And for that, we need to be able to work with and in an ecosystem that is future facing and allows the right set of talent to collaborate and leverage the best in class and current platforms and tools, and therefore cloud, therefore data, right? I have a fairly easy job today because we have a brilliant set of panelists, and hopefully we'll all be able to take away some firm pointers which will help all of us on our cloud journey. Divya, I wanted to bring you in first. I think firstly, thank you for sparing the time because other than, of course, the dual, the hats off that you wear in IKEA globally, right? You also have been pretty busy preparing to publish your daughter's third book, right? The first two have been runaway bestsellers on Amazon. So how frantic has it been, Divya?
It's been pretty crazy. I mean, we all hold crazy jobs, but I also have a secondary job, not just as a mother, but as a publisher. So yeah, I've got a 10-year-old daughter who loves to write fiction books, and 2 have become bestsellers. We're doing the third. So it's been like weekends, weekdays, everything packed. So.
I would actually say that's your primary job, right? And secondary is what you do with it, as it should be for all of us who are parents. But it's amazing not only how technology has disrupted the business of books, I mean, publishing, distributing, but the actual object itself, the book itself with Kindles and e-readers. But to come back to the subject at hand today, right? You have played leadership roles both in finance and in data, which is a very unusual combination to find. However, I think both of us agree that actually it's a great advantage to business and a brilliant relationship. How does it help to be able to bridge both of these data and the finance world together, Vika?
Thanks, Sujit. A fantastic question, because you used a word earlier, the symbiosis, right? And if you look at data and finance, they really have the most, I would say, one of the most symbiotic relationships. If both of them are really strong and actually interact with each other, both can be made so much richer and stronger and have this kind of a cycle in them. I really think, capturing data, processing data, the cloud has done a fantastic job. There are so many things. I think, interestingly, at the stage we're in now, I think that is easier because it's a little more technical. What has become more complex is how do you use that data, right? How do you utilize it to make the right decisions? And if you look at any company, any executives in a company, there are three primary, of course, there are lots of objectives, but three very primary objectives: growth, profitability, customer experience, right? And if you actually look at every line of your P&L, of, things, we can actually track backwards and say, what are the metrics? And then what is the data to be tracked, and link actually action to data to what is happening in your financial statement, right? And if you can actually join the dots between all three of them, then you suddenly have a beautiful relationship where you know how everything you're doing in the organization is actually impacting what comes out, the output in your financial statement. And then you can tweak it back and forth, right? Because what shows up here then goes backwards as feedback loop. But going back to the growth, profitability, and customer experience, growth and profitability, I think there is something where it is so important. I mean, especially in the retail, and while I've worked in different industries, right now in the retail industry, the boom that's happening on data is amazing, right? Every second we have 400, stores, 40 countries. Every second there is data being generated, right? What do you do with that data? How does it impact your growth? How does it impact your profitability? Has become a matter of making choices also. So you have to make a choice saying, what are those things you want to track? What are those things? What are the outcomes you want to get from that data? Right? What are those top drivers of your growth and profitability, so that then you can say, this is the data that is going to help me the most out of all that, super set of data that you have there. And then be able to link back to say, if I drive this and this is the data set I have, then this is the outcome I get for growth and profitability. And there it's really about choice. Customer experience is really a little different from the first two, because here is where I think you really get instant feedback, right? Everything a customer does gets tracked. So you can actually test and try and learn on a daily basis here, because you immediately know, okay, you have fulfillment options. Does the customer like 2 options, 3 options? You add an option. Do they like it? Do they not like it? Instant feedback. The same thing about, what you do online, the products you sell. And I think that has really made the job of a CFO, according to me, so important to learn the job of a CDO, the Chief Data Officer. And I've been very privileged that I've played both roles in IKEA Retail, right? Where I've been the Chief Data Officer, also I've been, the CFO of digital. And if I look at all our channels, I think it's so evident, the symbiosis between these.
I actually love what you're saying, right? The mechanics of moving to cloud is a commodity today, in the sense that it's evolving, but at the same time, it's not really the cutting edge and the new frontier of research and development. That has been done and solved, and for everybody else. I think where the art really is now is how do you contextually apply this to your own businesses, right? And there's no set rule for this. Somebody has to know your business really well to be able to come back and say, hey, this is the data, this is how I want to use it. And I love what the founder of Zerodha actually said on this very recently. He was asked, what sort of artificial intelligence do you use? You're a new age financial organization. He said 0, right? Because we haven't been able to find the use case for artificial intelligence. We use what you normally use. We just use our data more intelligently than anything else. And I love that. I think because we're in India, I can say this, right? I have this favorite thing that I tell my clients also. just because it's what everybody's doing, you know, machine learning and artificial intelligence, doesn't mean that's what you have to do. In Hindi, we have this saying which says, "Button सीने के लिए तलवार की जरूरत नहीं है," right? You know, and therefore it translates brilliantly, I think, to where a lot of us are in our data ambitions. But Kaushal, I wanted to quickly bring you in. You obviously Pfizer, very topical organization right now for the last few years, and before that, you have been, you know, you have, while you yourself have been a tech and a pharma veteran, you've spent more than a decade doing all of this, right? But honestly, now while the data space has become suddenly fashionable, right? It's only since the pandemic, I think, that the adoption activities in the pharma sector has really accelerated when it comes to cloud and the push behind data and push behind using data, right? And you have been right at the forefront of it, Kaushal. I wanted to bring you in and hear a little bit more of that story.
Thank you, Mr. Jeet. And yes, you're right. Pharma has, as an industry, has been notoriously been slow adopters of new and emerging technology. Part of the reason behind that has been, you know, it's a highly regulated industry, as it should be. It creates medicines that, you know, it's trying to cure disease in patient population. But the advent of the pandemic, and as we are coming out, and hopefully we are coming out of the pandemic, there is definitely an increased recognition that a more modern technology stack, you know, be it cloud, you know, advent of data and data analytics, is something that is the need moving forward for the industry. Speaking of data, the industry has always been always relied on empirical data in order to understand, you know, the efficacy of medicine and so on. But it's just the modern technology-based data analytics, the ability to look at huge volumes of data, that's making it possible to, you know, to share and to tap into multiple sources of data and information than has ever been possible in the past. Cloud, of course, has been key in adopting its ability to leverage scale, to host large amount of data, enabling, you know, these data warehouses and data lakes to be created for that particular exercise, you know, to take place in the pharma industry. So yes, I would agree with you on the pandemic sort of being a catalyst to that. The interesting thing you talked about was around use cases, right? And you're absolutely right. I mean, today there is artificial intelligence, machine learning. There's a lot of emerging tech, which is very interesting, you know, tech that's coming out. But you're right in the sense that we shouldn't be just adopting it for the sake of adopting it. There has to be specific business-facing use cases that it needs to be applied to for it to be more relevant from a business standpoint. And let me talk about a couple of these examples, you know, specifically from a pharma perspective. And starting with accelerating, you know, the drug discovery and the drug development process. I mentioned that there is availability of data, large volumes of data repositories, as they relate to patents, as they relate to scientific publications, as well as clinical trial data. And that has allowed us to, you know, look at connecting that information, driving predictive analytics on top of it, using data models, and try and determine, you know, which avenues to pursue, which avenues are the ones that will, you know, give us the most likely best results, should we pursue them. And the second piece is the advent of new and emerging space in pharma called the real world data and the real world evidence. That's essentially a science that deals with analysis of post-marketing data that allows pharma companies to better understand how a particular product is performing in the real world against the disease that it's trying to cure. You know, what kind of adverse events is it causing, if any? What are the reasons why it's causing it, so that they can go back and look at the molecular aspects of the medicine and try and see how they can eliminate some of these undesirable things, whereas increasing the efficiency of medicine. So again, you know, going back to your comment around use cases, extremely important that you analyze what's the eventual need and what's the eventual outcome that you're desiring from whatever data or cloud-based project that you're embarking on.
I couldn't agree more, Kaushal. What I really like is this is the entire industry, your entire sector, right? Is a brilliant example of how a sector will actually leapfrog and not necessarily go through the entire learning curve. So obviously we understand one of the cornerstones of what you're doing in pharma in terms of research and development is trust, right? And therefore that had to be established with the cloud players, which I think now is a given, but it took a while. It took a while for people to really trust that their data is safe on the cloud, right? And then what happened is possibly this has been the quickest to market vaccine in the history of mankind, as far as I know, right? And therefore this had to be driven. So you needed the speed and the ability to scale up quickly, and more importantly, you are now actually, you have live use cases of two of the most possibly complex ways of using data, which is using both real-time data, where you're talking about live market data, post market data, etc. And then you're also looking at high, very technical field of unstructured data in terms of scientific journals, articles, so on and so forth, right? And these are now actually at some of the cutting edge of where, so you went from being a sector which didn't utilize all of this so much, right? And then suddenly you're right at the forefront of where it's all happening, right? Of course, this was further accelerated by the pandemic, etc. But I think this is a brilliant example for all of us to figure out that none of us are behind in the race to really get there. It just takes one fine day somebody to wake up and say, hey, listen, this is the way forward, and this is what, just that determination of saying, okay, that's the future, and then sort of take the leap of faith there, right? Kaushal, I'll come back to you. Alok, I wanted to bring you into this conversation. Alok, Samsung, of course, is a core technology organization. We're all aware of everything that you're doing in the hardcore product market, and therefore it's natural that you are early adopters of technology, right? But does that also translate to adoption of data and cloud for the larger part of your business, not just the product development part of a business?
Sure, I will get to that, and thanks. Lively discussions. I just wanted to start by saying, why are you talking today about data into converting to dollars? We've been always using data in some form or the other. I think the biggest thing is, the tangible assets like real estate or gold, we recognize them. These are strong assets. But when you produce a lot of, let's say, even waste products, now we are talking how to convert waste into wealth, right? We are starting to do a lot of patents and intellectual properties being an intangible asset. Same way, I think the data, who comes first is a question, but, definitively as we are producing and we are seeing value either in personalizations or in statistical way, we are seeing its importance and growing it. And obviously, we as a consumer electronics company are widely using. So I'll come to that. But I also wanted to comment on a few things that have been discussed so far. I think Divya was talking and you were asking about the finance and the data connections. My son, after graduating from U Chicago, he joined a new age company and in the strategy finance. And he asked me, what is one topic that you recommend me to learn more than what I learned? And he combined this data analytics with the finance and doing extremely well, I should say, in terms of bringing its value to the product and connecting between typical organizations and the new age product organization. So that's one linkage that I see. You also mentioned about, don't use the talwar to take off the button, if I get it correctly. So that's also something we see, that you don't need always big data, right? We talk about big data, but I think people are talking about right-sized data, because otherwise we just keep storing and storing and storing. And sometimes you have seen the very small data plays a very big role in this. So the relevant data is very vital. And whether it is real time, whether it is batch. So when we define a platform using cloud, I think the important thing is, there is some kind of cloud-based data platform that's defined, but how do you optimize in terms of cost, in terms of the latency, if you do a query that you could get a quick response. So this is where I see some good kind of progress. And then your question and this today's topic about cloud, but we are also a device company. So I must say that we are doing a very hybrid way of managing this data platform. It's a distributed, but yes, there is the fundamental data platform is the cloud, in which you look into how do you do a single source of truth, kind of ingesting the data, the stream processing, the storage, business analytics. So we look into that. But we also look into what could be a private data for people, and can I not keep it on the device and process it? Even personalization. So we are looking into two kinds of benefits of the data. One is I could provide a personalized service to somebody, and their data is their data. It doesn't have to go anywhere. And I can store a little bit of past 7 days, a month's data, and can help it in health, in using home energy consumption. This doesn't have to go there. So this is a personalized service. On the other hand, there is a benefit of certain data that could be used for a global community, and therefore it can be more statistical in nature and bring a global value to other consumers. How is community using in one form or the other? So I think these are some broad thoughts. And I run for Samsung, the data platform for IoT, what we have as a SmartThings as a platform. And we have connected 200 million devices. And with my corporate roles, I've been playing a critical role in defining that cloud data platform. And in each of those spaces, how we can help the developers, how we can help the users, and how we can help the executives, business decision makers into that. So we can come back to that discussion. Thank you.
Sure. I think Alok, brilliant. And just to echo a lot of what you were saying, if any of us has had the misfortune of being a part of any of my talks and sessions on data, you would see I spend a lot of time on saying it's not really about big data, it's about quick data, right? Data that you can, while that transaction is happening, that you can capture, collect, and act on. Act is the most important part, because otherwise it's academic, right? And the second is, you're right. You have to figure out what is, because like I keep saying this, data in organizations are only two utilities, right? It is either for efficiency, so I'm doing something already, I want to do it better, faster, cheaper, or for capability, saying I want to do something, but right now I can't do it for whatever reasons, right? And that's why you would want to take on these new age technologies and the new age infrastructures, etc. We'd love to hear about the use case. Alok, we'll come back to you. I wanted to bring in Sachin. Sachin, you are of course our insider into this whole world of cloud players. You are a very important part of the upstream ecosystem of cloud players, because as contrary to popular beliefs, they are also based out of data centers and not really just right up there in the cloud somewhere. So who better than you, Sachin, to give us a view on how bullish they are on exponential growth in India?
No, I would say that thanks to all the organizations who are taking cloud very, very seriously. I mean, whether it's Divya's organization, whether it's Kaushal's organization, or whether it's Samsung, Alok mentioned about that. I think almost all companies are investing big in cloud. That means need for a lot of processing power. It also means storing of all that data that is generated. So what we are seeing is that all that requirement is leading up to a very strong growth in the data center market in India. So not just existing Indian players, a lot of international players are also planning to enter India and set up more and more data centers. So one is in terms of the growth from a supply side is huge. We are expecting, I think the current installed capacity of what we call colo data centers, which are the shared data centers, is around 500 to 600 megawatt, and we are expecting this to double in the next 4 to 5 years. So that's the level of speed. That is one aspect. Second aspect that we are seeing is, earlier Mumbai used to account for majority of this data center space, but we are seeing that more and more data center providers are now spreading over the country. We are seeing centers coming up, or data centers coming up in Delhi, Noida, Calcutta, Chennai, and even Hyderabad, and so on. So we are seeing a lot of data centers across the country. That is the second thing that is happening. And the third thing that is also happening is that some of the players are also looking at what we call as the edge data center, which are even closer. Can we look at a small data center in Jaipur? Can we look at a small data center in Lucknow? And all this to provide maximum, speed of response. So very, very big investment happening on the supply side. And once 5G comes in, I see a lot more use cases coming up, and corporates investing even more to look at how to increase experience of users, because 5G will enable a lot more faster speed, a lot more data download speeds, and that will give another flip to what will happen through cloud.
No, I think Sachin, very interesting that you mentioned 5G, because one of the hyperscalers in one of the recent unveiling events of the year just talked about how they have this entire product around a cloud hyperscaler providing 5G connectivity to a localized area, whether it's a factory, a workshop, a township, etc., etc. And I think that's going to become a very important game changer in how people use connectivity, especially in the IoT/edge, etc., world. And the two ways of figuring out how rapidly an ecosystem is going to grow is, number one, the supply side, and of course what you were talking about, right? They're very bullish on the supply side. I think the second is also on the demand side, and the best way of looking at this is look at the skill availability in the market today, right? The people who are newly skilled are all cloud skilled. Look at the demand for cloud skilling. I think it's all over the media as to how there's a tremendous amount of shuffling because of and rising salaries in the area of cloud engineering in India, right? And it's outpaced all other technical skill requirements, I think, today. So therefore, a good indicator of what organizations are thinking in terms of their future, right? But then there is also a flip side, and coming back to the way I think we have spoken about this, I want to take this up with you. There is this entire debate of ethical use of data, right? And especially in sectors like retail, which thrive on data. Do you think, and at some point of time, there's going to be, there already is, and there's going to be tighter regulations around the use of customer data, right? Do you think there is still a way to be both an ethical data user and still convert them to dollars?
Yes, absolutely. I mean, it's interesting. So I also lead the information security and data privacy team globally. And you spoke about regulations. Regulations are important. Regulations are there. And frankly, there are lots of them, especially with GDPR. I think it's there. But ethics is something different, right? Ethics is 5 steps above that. One thing is to say we are securing data, we're locking, we are as per law is one aspect of it. But then are you doing what the customer really wants you to do? And what the customer perceives as the ethical use of data on your side is something very different, and something I think that is a philosophy, right, of a company, or, where they need to go. And I think every company is dealing with it differently. We are very, very, very serious about it. So much so that we have a data ethics strategy, data ethics, plan for the next 5 years. We are like very categoric in this. We also, IKEA is known for values. Right. The reason people have come to us for decades and decades is trust. And now with the explosion of data, that we want to sort of build the same kind of trust in the data as they have in our products. We have to, I think, face one thing. We are never going to go back to the past, right? Data is going to get generated every second. There is going to be huge volumes of data. You are going to be the custodian of the customer's data. And that means that our perception of ourselves as to what we do with it also has to change. It doesn't need to be a tick in the box, right? Saying that, yes, I have done this. It needs to be much more than that, to say, how can we really give the customer the choice, right, as to what do they want to do? The research has shown that there are people who are very happy sharing the data if they get fantastic personalization. Alok spoke about so much personalization, right? If they get everything served to them, right? There are people who do not want you to use the data. They want completely generic. They don't want the personalization. They say, just do not touch my data, do not use my data, do not share my data. And I think the complexity arises with that, because regulation is standard across everybody. Ethics means that the customer should have the choice to be at whatever spectrum they want of that entire chain of being either, where they say don't use it, which means that you can't even track. It could be, you can't even use that data for your internal purposes for anything, right? Or you go the other extreme of saying, okay, they really want it, so it's fine to do what they want with it, and and do things. But how can you use it in a way that the customer always feels they have the choice? The customer always feels that, we are in control of that data. And then goes to your next point of how do you then turn it into dollars? Because at the end of the day, the one thing that we have really seen with IKEA, right, be it with our affordability agenda, be it with our sustainability agenda, if the customer thinks that you want to do good, then good business is really good business, in the sense that if you do good, you are bound to have business that grows. And we have seen that across all spectrums, across decades. And we firmly believe that, if you really invest in having good data ethics and actually make sure that the customer knows it, right, and is able to interact with it. So if you look at the new app that, we put out, you can actually go into the LinkedIn and see the demo of what we've done in data ethics. I mean, it really gives the choice to the customer at every stage. This is not about cookies. This is really about controlling it at every stage. And we have tested to see that the customers come back, they love it. The feedback has been amazing, and that is bound to lead to good business, right, and good dollars there. So,
I absolutely agree. I think two aspects to it, right? Like you rightly said, ethics and regulations are two different things altogether. Ethics is obviously the principle of an organization of how you use data. And I used to say this in my last job where I was part of, so I was leading the CVM customer value for one of the largest telcos in the world, right? And I used to say ethics of reciprocity, right? Do only unto customers what you would be okay with somebody else doing with the data. So that's number one. Number two, I think there is also an element of customer education here. And I keep talking about this to larger consumer forum, saying there is nothing for free. If it's for free, if the product is for free, you are the product then, right? And therefore, if you expect to get brilliant contextual recommendations, access to information, services, right? What you are giving in exchange is the data. Right? Obviously not PIA, but the rest of your data. And therefore, you have to decide whether you want access to those sort of services or not. And therefore, then is it okay for you to share data? Like you said, the choice should be with the consumers. And I know many people who would be very, very okay once they are given a choice and it's transparent. So as long as it's transparent, I think a lot of people would be very, very brilliantly okay with it. But Kaushal, I wanted to come back to you again on the question of adoption, right? And a lot of industries who have now started adopting, I think, and would actually be able to bring the conversation to the table, saying what were the challenges to really adopting this entire change, right? And how did you, for example, go about mitigating these challenges for your organization? How can other people do it for theirs?
Sure. Thanks for that question, Mr. So again, speaking for pharma, we know that pharma is a highly regulated industry, right? And rightly so, simply because the products that we create have a direct impact on health and well-being of our end consumer, right? So definitely needs to be a well-regulated industry. But the fact that it's been regulated for so long, there are set ways of doing things. There are set processes that have worked in the past. So there's, that makes the industry a bit harder to sort of change those preset notions, preset processes that have worked well in the past to try and adopt a new thing which is untested, untried, and sometimes scary, right? Because it's challenging your basic, basic setup and the basic way of how you think, more risk-averse way of thinking. And again, an example, if you look at cloud, right? So before cloud, we had data being stored internally, and we had security cordon around it to make sure that it was protected. We had the right privacy controls implemented around it. All of our regulations around good manufacturing practices, good clinical practices were all implemented through the data that resided in-house. And now with the advent of cloud, you are asking us to host that somewhere else, where my immediate fear is, okay, within my house, I have full control over how I'm going to protect the data. I somehow lose that control when I ask somebody else to host that data, right? So that in itself was the the growing challenge, the mindset challenge around that change to moving towards cloud. But over time, that there is now increased recognition and understanding that even the players that are going to partner with us on these cloud solutions are experienced players They have the necessary technology inbuilt to allow us the same level of security, privacy control that we've been accustomed to. And then, of course, as a partner, there is a conversation between us and the partner to say, hey, this is what our expectation is. This is how we've typically done it, but we understand, the setup at your end is going to be different. But this is our expectation around how our data is going to be securely managed, is going to be, the privacy is going to be maintained, and all of our regulatory controls are going to be implemented. And over time, that has eased to a more risk-based approach, where the organization has decided, okay, some of our data, maybe commercial data, is not that heavily regulated, and maybe that's fine to kind of outsource it and host it on a cloud, allowing the analytics, etc., that we talked about. But then there are some other pieces of data which are highly regulated, and maybe we move towards a more private cloud kind of an environment where we still have some amount of control over how this is exactly managed, and it is in-house to an extent. So it is, it's been a shift. It's a mindset shift, I would say, from being risk averse and being, continuing to try and work what has already been tried and tested, to adopt something that's new, to go forward in a risk-based approach and try and understand what the underlying risk actually is, and then try and mitigating that. And then, of course, then comes the trust between yourself and your partners to kind of execute to the plans that you've laid out. So it's been a long journey. I'm happy that we are sort of towards the end of that journey, so to speak, so that now we can look at technologies like cloud and then build on top of that, because really that's what the key is behind cloud as an infrastructure technology.
I think it's a basic human tendency to hesitate when we can't see something physically. We assume we have less control over it, right? And that's the initial glass ceiling that really had to be broken when we're doing this. And like you very brilliantly said, I think, and I'm going to quote again my friend Abhijit Verma, who says, "Thou shalt cloud. If thou clouds, thou shalt multi-cloud or hybrid cloud," right? And that's where I think a lot of people are choosing to go in bits and steps. But Sachin, again on the idea of leveraging cloud, as an organization, you are not just a part of the hyperscaler ecosystem, but you're also an organization that really leverages the inherent capabilities of data and cloud, etc., to remain connected and agile. I wanted you to spend a couple of minutes just on that, Sachin.
Right. No, I think, if you look at Schneider, we are makers of electrical equipments, whether you call it a UPS or a transformer or various products that go into your home. Frankly, 5-10 years ago, maybe we were just makers of electrical equipment, but now we are looking at how do we use cloud as a way to bring the new innovation to customers, which was not possible 10 years ago, right? And I'll give you an example. Today, let's say we make a transformer and a UPS and let's say an ACB or air circuit breaker. Now today we have data coming out of each of these devices. And as a person owning an office, you can actually see how much is the power that is flowing through these devices. Is there a drop? How much is the efficiency of each of these devices? You can actually control is there enough power, or do you want to optimize some of your power usage and so on? Not just that, you can also do a lot of predictive analytics. Okay, is there a temperature going up in this transformer? Is this indicating it's the time to do service? And imagine you have hundreds of these equipments across your setup, and you will have one dashboard where you will have health of each of these equipments. You will have power consumption of each of these equipments, and you will have whether all things are working in a smooth manner or not. And imagine a data center where all this cloud data is residing. Today, a cloud service provider can actually see how much is the power loss from when the power comes to when the power reaches server, right? And is everything working smoothly? If there is a potential of even one product failing, you will get an alert because the temperature will start rising and so on and so forth. So that is how we are leveraging, power of digitization and power of cloud, because you can do all of this remotely. You don't need to be physically in that data center. For all that matter, the data center might be in remote, on Mount Everest, right? Even then, you can monitor what's happening there, sitting in Delhi, sitting in Gurgaon, sitting in Mumbai, anywhere. And that's the power of cloud. That's what we are trying to make it happen. How do you take basic products and start transmitting some of the information that is there on those products, and you get the data in cloud, and then you use all that data together and come out with use cases on top of that to help the customers. And this, to me, is the next level of industrial revolution, where we are using power of the existing equipment and the data that they are throwing out to create new use cases to make lives of people better.
So Sachin, interesting, right? This is almost like saying, if all the inanimate objects in my factory, my data center, my workshop, my store, etc., if they could speak to me, what would they tell me about their efficiency and what they do, right? And by and large, while a lot of us will speak about insights and etc., finally, I think a lot of value also just comes from visibility to information in a drill down fashion, right? So the idea is to say, can I de-average the measurements of all of the matrices that I'm looking at, and therefore take decisions at a more granular level, right? Rather than just aggregate them and look at them more holistically. I think that's absolutely where a lot of the advantages of all of these such ambitions come from, right? Alok, finally, we thought we would love to hear about that use case that you are talking about before we round it off. Yeah.
Sure. I think in this sessions, the importance of the cloud operations and the significance of data that we have all talked about, it's well established. And Sachin talked about the 5G, and we work very deeply on the 5G. So you have the device and you go to a radio access network, you go to the core network, and all these are implemented in the cloud. And from Samsung, we have many services like Samsung Health, Samsung Pay. These we are hosting in the cloud with the people's data and providing that service. The example that I wanted to talk is a little bit more about, SmartThings as a platform, the 200 million devices that we have connected. And also Bixby is running on another cloud, which is our voice assistant, feeding to this whole smart home operations, helping the device control of it. So when you talk about this decision-making part of it, we look into three ways. One, what can we do for the developers, right? Whoever are building this Bixby or SmartThings. What can we offer to the users? And what is for the executives for decision-making at the back end to make some business more flourishing? So if I just take very simple example, developers, you have this Bixby voice assistant, ASR, automatic speech recognition. Now, so suppose I say in a noisy environment, I could not hear you, or I say I couldn't be here. Maybe there is a chance of not getting it right? So then we need to know what went wrong. Is it in the ASR component? Is it in natural language processing? And developers go back and try to fix it. So this is a kind of metrics that we are developing throughout the system so that the system design is better. Now let's talk about the user analytics very briefly. So if I have wearables, we have many IoT devices, but just let's say wearables, we started with health data, calorie measurements, how much you walk and things like that. So initially it was me. Then we said, okay, together as a team, you want to contest, compete, cycling, who can do how much, you get that data against a pool. And then we said, can we help them being a little bit better medically or otherwise? And suppose, your blood pressure is changing and I have a sensor there and it's always touching on the body. Therefore, it can measure the blood pressures. We have applications that's already uploaded. But then doctor, in the transition time, when you had a normal blood pressure to going up, they will say an ambulatory blood pressure that you needed to carry. But now you don't need that. Actually, this is giving a continuous rating and you can actually measure and report back to the doctors. And then not just your wearables, let's say you have your different equipments, gym equipments. We can collect from various sensor devices and use it. So therefore, our intent is to help the users to do better. Yeah. Now, just the last point on the executives, you know, I think Sachin was talking about and Kaushal on the predictive analytics part of it. So this is definitely all the digital appliances we have. We can order the spare parts, and we know exactly what's going wrong, why the compressors are down. So what can be your next device, or what can be the next kind of feature that I could add, which will help consumers? These are things I believe we could do more and more. Maintaining privacy, maintaining ethics that Divya talked about, partly on the devices, partly on the private cloud, and rest going to the public cloud to take it forward.
Absolutely, Alok. I think you're, and we in KPMG have this framework for digital success, which hinges on three aspects, right? We call it connected, powered, and trusted. So the interconnectedness of every part of our business, which is technologically amplified capabilities to create, experiment, and scale and demand. And finally, of course, underlying everything, protection for our assets, our data, and our consumers, right? And hyperscalers and a good data ecosystem are critical and essential to run all of this. I totally agree with you. I have just been given time check. Bhumi is keeping me honest on this. So, you know, just to round this off, maybe I just wanted to share this. I seem to get a lot of my talking point from names nowadays, and I got shared this recently and I loved it. It says, someone asked God that now that water has become an essential element for survival, what was the plan to solve the supply challenge and get it to all corners of the world? And God said, I've been thinking of a cloud-based system, right? So the precedent always existed. It took technology a few millennium to catch up, and now, of course, we are making up time. Lost time with vengeance, right? But it's been a brilliant day of interaction with all of you, and of course all the sessions that have happened before. So people who are designing, visioning, building, and consuming India's cloud and data journey, right? Divya, Kaushal, Alok, Sachin, thank you so much. We have been a brilliant panel, and thank you everyone who has joined, and I hope we'll stay on. There are some brilliant folks coming on after us. I'll be speaking to Sudarshan from Hitachi Ventures in a bit. So, you know, that promises to be an interesting conversation. Do join in. Thank you so much. And Shikha, handing back to you.
Thank you, Biswajit.
Thank you for hosting us, Biswajit.
Suji, thank you very much. Your next session is much awaited. And of course, thank you for sharing the responsibility of doing a nice build up for the next specialist who are going to join us. Thank you very much. And of course, I'm keeping my fingers crossed, as you said, to host all of you in person sooner than soon. And on that note, panel, big thank you for discussing holistically, considering the time that we had in mind, on how data analytics can help businesses optimize their performance. Of course, because we're concerned about driving growth and efficiency, the business intelligence, the operations, and the analysis of the entire business value chain. So it all came in just at the right place. Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest of the summit. And on that note, ladies and gentlemen, very quickly, I'll be leading you all into the next one-on-one chat that's coming up. That will be about mobilizing your data with the Snowflake Data Cloud. We'll be right back. Please stay tuned.